Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. And continue with our discussions about the upcoming election season and who's running and what's it all about. And this evening we have with us the senator from the Second District.
Yes.
Joan Lovely. Welcome,
Yes.
Joan.
Thank you. Happy to be here, George. Thank you for the invite.
So you're running for re-election. How many times have you been elected?
I have been, I was on the Salem City Council for 15 years before I went up to state government. And I am in my 12th year, so 6th term. And it feels like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why do you keep doing it?
I think that I bring the right balance of experience and transparency to the position. I work very intently on working across the aisle with all of my colleagues, because that's really how we get things done. I've seen in my experience that the extreme right and the extreme left don't get a lot done. They talk a lot, but if you really look at the records, they don't get a lot done. And so I consider myself a moderate Democrat, raised here in Beverly by two moderate Republicans. And, I bring those values to the table and to get the work done for the constituents. It's all about the people that put us into office, to listen to them, to respond and make those decisions accordingly.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point because almost annually the council gets criticized, the state legislature gets criticized that, well, you didn't get a budget done this year again. And it gets us back to the point you're making that you got extremes on either side, and they just hold up the progress. So how do you get stuff done in spite of that?
How do we get it done?
Yeah.
So, you brought up an interesting point that I do want to, just remark on about not having a budget done. For the last 10 budget cycles, we haven't had a budget done on time. So we've worked closely with the governor, whoever it might be. It was Baker.
Yeah.
Before that, it was Patrick.
Yeah.
And now Healy. Working with the governor and the Administration and Finance Office on, we want to make sure when we do our budget, we get it right. And sometimes revenues can fluctuate month to month.
Yeah.
We saw that COVID tipped that completely upside down. We had to shut down state government, really shut down the world. But it really is up to us to get a budget done on time. And so I have been on Ways and Means. I have pushed to get our budget done on time. If we have to take another 30 days to be able to absolutely get it right, I support that. But I think that we need to do it on time.
Well, that's one of the things that I think people don't want to recognize, that how much money you've got to play with is a moving target.
It is. It is a moving target.
I guess early in the year, everybody's very optimistic. Oh, we're getting like gobs of Texas coming in, so we're going to have less to spend, and they plan accordingly. And then, whoops, surprise shows up that, well, it didn't quite meet the expectations.
Right, and so every fall, actually in December, Ways and Means has a big public hearing, and we invite in economists, budget analysts, experts from across Massachusetts, from across our departments of higher ed, just so that we know. We listen to the experts, and they tell us what we can plan on in terms of collecting revenue for the upcoming year. And then we depend on that. But that number can be fluid, so then we have to adjust.
Yeah, so that's the real world.
It is.
It's an estimate. Sometimes it's less than a swag, but anyway. So what do you think that is the biggest accomplishment of the past legislature?
We have been very busy, and I know that sometimes the media will say we're on a 5-month vacation because we have, we start our session. We have a 2-year session, so we start in January of the first year, so that was in January of 23, and we go right through to July 31st of 24. Those are formal sessions, but by Constitution, the legislature has to meet every 72 hours. So that is Mondays and Thursdays. Sometimes it's different days, but that's required. So round the clock, we are meeting and we are passing legislation. We're still very busy right now. We did a very big maternal health reform bill so that our mothers and who are delivering can do so safely, including doulas and nurse midwives, and so they can be practicing, because we have seen, especially for our communities of color, we've seen the maternal mortality and infant mortality go up, and we're in one of the best states in the nation. Look at the healthcare system we have here and the hospitals we have, and we should not be in the lower ranks of being able to care for our families. So that was a very big process that we went through. I was chair of the Postpartum Depression Commission for about 9 years. I handed the reins over last year to a new senator, a woman of color who's done a great job. But for the last 9-10 years, we've been seeing those numbers reverse. And now, so we did this very big bill to make sure that everyone is being cared for, that they can have a safe pregnancy and a safe delivery. So that was one of the big bills that we worked on.
What do you think is the cause for this increase?
We looked at all of the data and just saw that some communities of color, even here in Massachusetts, don't have access to health care. If you're in rural Massachusetts, you could be an hour from a hospital.
Yeah.
But if you're a poor, black woman in Boston, you might not be able to access health care either. So we have changed that. We have also amended our Medicaid program to make sure that if you are pregnant and delivering an infant in Massachusetts, you're going to be safe and cared for.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other issue that keeps coming up, I think, is surprise, surprise, a lot of people are coming across the border. And once they come across the border, they end up someplace.
Right.
And Boston is getting more than their share, or maybe they are getting just their share of immigrants, and it's aggravating the problem that they had on mass and caste for I don't know how many years.
Yep.
And we get to a situation, I guess, that what is the state's responsibility and how much can the state do in a situation like this?
Well, let me first say that we need to secure our borders to the south, where most of the immigrants are crossing undocumented.
Yeah.
But here in Massachusetts, we have the EA system, the Emergency Assistance Family System, that was enacted under Dukakis.
Yeah.
So back in the 1980s. We've always funded it to take care of Massachusetts families who find themselves homeless. And under the Healy-Driscoll administration, they have capped that at 7,500 families because this was such a large influx of documented asylum seekers, mostly from Haiti, coming into Massachusetts. So that's at 7,500 families. Those are not all Haitian families. About half of those families are Massachusetts residents who, because of our housing crisis, have found themselves homeless. So as a state, we agreed back in the 80s, I wasn't there then, to take care of families. And the system is in place now capped because of the expense. It's approaching $1 billion to be able to oversee this EA system. That does not include undocumented individuals who are here, who have found their way to Massachusetts. They're not eligible.
Yeah.
They're not eligible. The only thing that undocumented immigrants are eligible for is emergency health care.
Yeah.
You're a human being.
Yeah.
If you're going to have some type of health issue or risk, you're going to be cared for in this state and other states as well. Yep. So we are working on it now. I will tell you, when I took office in 2013, Massachusetts was housing a lot of homeless families in motels. And I campaigned on it and said, no, this is the wrong policy. A, it's very expensive, and B, it's bad for families. I visited the Motel 6 and where that former Denny's was in Danvers, the motel there. The conditions were deplorable. And I worked really hard with the Patrick administration and then with the Baker administration to be able to reverse that. And under Charlie Baker, he reversed that. And he was able to empty out the motels. And that's the direction we need to move in. It's too expensive. It's bad for families.
Well, if you empty out the motels, where do you put them?
Well, so what's happening is in Salem, for example, Salem had an empty dorm at Salem State. And so they put all Haitian migrants in that dorm, all documented here under asylum, all families. Today, that dorm is empty, so that it was filled for about a year and a half. Every single adult in that dorm received their working papers. And they are all working and have moved on and are now self-sustaining and taking care of themselves. And for example, Salem Hospital is now at a full census of employees because of the migrants that are here. They're now working in the kitchen, they're working in the laundry. Those are jobs that typically others may not take. These migrants are happy to take them. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I was just talking to Mayor Cahill last night. We were at City Hall for Hispanic Month. It's from September 15th to October 15th. And we talked about our heritages and where do we hail from. My ancestors are from Germany, France, Ireland, and Portugal. Those were my ancestors that came to this country to find a better life. And so, like I said before, we need to secure the borders. We need to be able to have safety at our borders to be able to allow people to come in under our federal immigration system that needs to be fixed. That's not a state. The states don't get to say how that gets done, but it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's the crux of the problem, in my estimation. If the federal government doesn't control the borders and doesn't control the immigration, then it gets dumped on the state. As you say, people show up, and what are you going to do with them?
Look at Arizona. Look at California. Look at Texas. Look at Florida. All of the the border states who have really taken on a lot of migration. And you're right. And so people are heading north to look for work, to be with families who are already here, who are citizens. So we have to find a better way.
And yet at the same time, there needs to be an influx of people. We need more people in this country, but we need people who are going to contribute to the country.
Right.
And one of the things I just noticed recently was watching an article about on TV about the market, what's going on, and they had a gentleman on who's chief technical officer for a company called Planetaire. It's a company that's taking off, is doing great things. He's Indian, obviously of Indian extraction. He's got an Indian name and so forth. Speaks American English very well. So it doesn't appear that he is a first generation. Maybe he's second, third generation. But this is exactly what's going on. We need to bring people into this country who will contribute to the country.
Right.
And one of my pet peeves, I guess, is that every time we get a foreign student who gets a degree in one of our universities, there ought to be a green card stapled to his diploma and to make sure they stay here with.
Well, that's true, and we want to keep our young people here, and we do see some out-migration of our young people to other less expensive states to live in. I don't know that I would want to be living in Florida right now. I mean, with the devastation, it's just been terrible. These two hurricanes on top of each other. I'm just looking at the footage this morning and just, I feel for that state, and those residents that are there. But people are leaving Massachusetts for better opportunities because we're now a virtual world. Unless you work in a customer-facing or healthcare, you could probably do your job right from your computer.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to have those people who are coming to our state for the best education, we need them to stay here.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits, if you will, from COVID, that all of a sudden you found out a lot of people can work from home.
That's right.
And communication link with a computer is spectacular, what you can get done with it. So it's, again, part of the culture of Massachusetts is a very high level of education. And just like we've got a lot of good hospitals, there's a lot of good colleges and universities around, and they attract a lot of people. And
Yes.
you think about some of the efforts of the state legislature in particular to emphasize, at the time, the medical profession and medical planning and investing, and the area of Cambridge has grown up tremendously because of it. And one of the things that surprised me about, they did a survey of Beverly, part of Plan Beverly, and it came up that 90% of the people that live in Beverly, that work in Beverly, work in the medical profession. So there are areas in this section of the country, especially section of Massachusetts, that are really into that kind of thing, and that's attracting a lot of people. And I think it's worthwhile to perpetuate that, just like Silicon Valley is noted for its computer stuff.
Right, right. I couldn't agree more. So we need to be able to keep people here.
Yeah. And you brought up the other question of why are they leaving? Is, well, one of them is high cost of housing.
Right.
And that gets to another issue that, I think it was under Charlie Baker's administration that they passed a ruling about all around each one of the train stations, there needs to be multifamily housing. And here in Beverly, we've got that kind of dense population down by the train station downtown. Rantoul Street is getting to be a controversy in its own right because too much is. But at the same time, the other train stations, they got the zoning, but nothing's happening.
Right, so that is the MBTA Communities Act that the legislature passed back in 2021 under Baker. And it's designed to increase density right around where a train station would be or a bus stop. And community to community decides where that's going to go. It's not a mandate to build more housing. But if you look at Salem, downtown Salem and around, we have the right type of housing that supports that so that people can get to and from. Salem's the busiest commuter rail station in the system. And here in Beverly, a lot of building in downtown. I remember growing up here, Rantoul Street there was nothing happening on Rantoul Street, really. It was Cabot Street. But Rantoul Street is pretty alive now. It's got some nice businesses. A lot of people are living downtown, and they are directly on that train. They can walk right to the train and get to where they need to go. So, you talk about the high cost of housing and inflation, and I want to touch on that for a moment if I could. When the pandemic hit and we had to shut down government and everything else, tax revenues plummeted, right? There was no sales tax. People weren't buying anything. There was no excise, or there was excise tax, but some people were taking cars off the road or selling them. Hotel, motel tax, all the different taxes that make up the revenue sources that how we run government. And so when we were started to get our way out, through the pandemic, is that when the federal government stepped up and said, okay, we're going to send ARPA dollars to the states. Massachusetts alone received $450 billion in ARPA money to be able to spur the economy. That went to the PPP loans, the payroll protection plan, so that if you had unemployment insurance, you were, we had to reseed that because that emptied out pretty quickly. So many people were out of work. We also provided unemployment funds for people who didn't pay into the system. It was pandemic because for instance, our lobstermen, everybody had shut down. No one was working. And so $450 billion comes in. It comes into state government. It came into local governments. Beverly got their allotments. Salem, Peabody, Danvers, school systems got allotments. A lot of dollars came in. And the economists said to us, because you are accepting these dollars, because you have to, there will be inflation.
Yeah.
There absolutely will be inflation, and it happened. So we knew going in, accepting these dollars to keep the lights on, that there would be inflation. Kept coming with that is what happens when we have inflation? Interest rates go up.
Yeah.
And that stalled the housing market. And you see these crazy prices for properties because now we've seen the Federal Reserve has lowered the interest rate by half a point.
Yeah.
We still need to see that come down. But I will tell you, when my husband and I bought a house back in 1981, the interest rates were 18%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unheard of today.
Volcker did a job on the stagflation, but it was painful to go through it.
It was painful back then. And you remember gas lines?
Oh, yeah.
You had a day that you could go in and fill up your tank.
Depending on what your license plate number was, that's your day or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back there.
No,
we never want to go back. But I think our state is in good shape. We are seeing inflation like every state is seeing, and we are working on that to be able to bring those numbers down. Our unemployment rates are an all-time low. Yeah. So from a standpoint of what the state is doing, the state is very vibrant. We want to keep our young people here.
Yeah.
We want to be able to continue to see this inflation decrease, and it has, but it needs to go lower.
Oh yeah, it's just trickling down.
It is trickling down,
Yeah.
right? Exactly.
And one of the problems is they report. I think the report today that I saw was the inflation rate over the last year is down to 2.4%, which is not too bad. It's getting close to the goal.
Exactly.
But what it doesn't recognize is that it's been 2.4% month after month after month, and you're seeing the prices go up with it.
Right.
And that's really the impact that people feel is you go into the market to pick something up, and one of my favorites, you pick up a box of crackers, and, same size it used to be. You read down in the little corner, it's now 14 ounces where it used to be 16. Same with the cereal, same with orange juice. And so it
doesn't make sense that our food prices are so high, because it's not like we don't have the supply.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand. We have the supply.
Yeah.
So I've talked to some grocers, who have to react to the market, but they're seeing some price gouging on the products that they need to buy to be able to put them out to the consumer. So that's wrong. That should not be happening, and we need to get a handle on that.
Yeah, I think there was an article a couple of days ago in the Globe that said that Stop and Shop is on a campaign to reduce their prices. Mm-hmm. So they're reacting to the reality of people don't shop there.
That's
because
right.
the prices are up. And,
Market Basket. Market Basket is always
Market
busy.
Basket, Costco is
BJ's.
busy. Yeah,
Yes.
BJ's and
Yep.
all these. Walmart is another one.
I go to BJ's, and I paid, I think, $2.72 for a gallon, of gas last week when I filled up.
Yeah.
Whereas you're still seeing at some of the corner, gas stations, it's still over $3.
Yeah, and the reality is going to catch up to a lot of these companies. That, you can't compete with the big guys, and it's just going to change the character of the country. But at the same time, we're still struggling with a problem that housing costs are so expensive. Hardly anybody's building houses.
Well, again, during the pandemic, the cost of a 2x4 was like $7 a 2x4. It was just crazy. So Salem actually adopted accessory dwelling units, these ADUs, before the state just adopted it in our affordable housing bill. We've seen, so take me for instance. I want to stay in my home.
Yeah.
I consider myself a young senior.
Yeah.
I want to be able to stay in my home, but I'm an empty nester. My kids are out and gone. So why can't I take a part of my home and have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, where I rent at less than market rate to someone who needs a roof over their head. I get the benefit of some rent that helps me, with my taxes, and someone gets the benefit of a unit.
Yeah,
So,
and that gets into a discussion of but not in my backyard. And I've seen it here in Beverly when they started talking about ADUs, that, oh yeah, it's going to raise the traffic level to something unbelievable.
we haven't seen it. California is way ahead of us with these ADUs, and we haven't seen it. Some crazy amount of more traffic in California. It just hasn't happened. But I do, hear
You don't
about
want to get me wound up
the
in California
NIMBY.
traffic.
Oh, I know. I've been out there.
Yeah, one of my jobs, I used to have to travel from LAX to Ventura, and used to fly in at 9 o'clock 10 o'clock at night, and the ride out was perfect. Take me an hour to get out there, come back on a Friday afternoon trying to catch a flight, and it's a 2 or 3 hour drive. Yeah. So California's got a different set of problems.
They do.
Yeah.
They do, but I do think there's creative ways, and again, back to the MBTA Communities Act, there's creative ways to make some denser housing, but around our transit systems, directly around it. These don't have to be very big like half the city. They can be very directed, and so we just see that the town of Milton, the Attorney General is suing the town of Milton, and just went in front of the Supreme Judicial Court this week to see if what the legislature passed is legal. We had it reviewed for constitutional muster, but I'm happy to see that the SJC will weigh in.
Yeah, so that'll solve part of the problem anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, we've had a half hour of fun.
Have we already?
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank you very much for joining us this evening and giving us a little more insight as to what's going on, where our tax dollars are going, and what they're doing for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And as I mentioned lots of times, if you got a comment, send me an email. My email address is at the end of the credits. And if you have a more extensive comment you would like to make, there's room for you here at the table. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.